Welcome all. This is the second webinar by Drillity Consulting, and today we'll be talking about a very relevant and prevalent thing that's in our IT organization. That's a distributed model or a distributed agile model, and we'll be talking about few challenges that the current industry faces and a few of the solutions that the industry can adopt to overcome those challenges. Because as we know, the distributed model is the reality. Whether you're working on a waterfall model, whether you're working on an agile model, that's the reality that our industry has. Even though agile preaches co-located model and co-location, it's at a very minuscule level that we are seeing this sort of models being followed. Um, Personally speaking, as an employee, I certainly would like to work in a co-located model, but when you see it from a perspective of an employer, it's always difficult for them to have the co-located model, from the pricing perspective, where they have to think about sending the folks to the client side, sponsoring their plane tickets, sponsoring their medical insurances, then having them pay in the currency of the client. So from a cost perspective, it's not feasible for an organization to work in a co-located model. So that's where distributed model has come into picture now, and it has taken over the world completely. So if we see it in the recently or over the years, though it started from being in a co-located world, but now gradually over the years, and particularly over the last few years, we have seen all the projects are nearly 90 to 95% of projects being run in the distributed model. And again, um, there are some challenges associated with it, but the organizations are happy about it and they feel they can come up with solutions for the distributed model, and that's what is happening. We see over the period of years, we have seen that the management of distributed teams has become much better as we have gone um, um, year by year. So if you see in the graph below, you can see the first point where we see 59% say it's got better of how we have started managing our distributed team, just because people have now come to realize what are the solutions that one can see one or one can come up with for the challenges that are there. And when we talk about the challenges, there are two primary challenges from my perspective. And for, the first one is about communication. It's as simple as that. Face-to-face communication is still the way to go in Agile. But how do we have face-to-face communication while going with a distributed Agile model? So that's biggest challenge organizations face as to how can we go about it. And the second most important challenge is the cultural challenge that one faces, since we are going to work with teams across various geographies. We have to be very um, wary about the cultural differences that we have across countries, and we'll be covering that in the upcoming slides. So um, these are the two important challenges that one faces. So to begin with, let's start with the communication challenge. And the one important aspect of communication challenge is that since we are from various geographies, we have people speaking different languages. Not everybody speaks English. What do we do about it? How do we go about it? Then, if we are talking about face-to-face communication, how do we resolve that problem from or that challenge that that we are still working in Agile and we are doing face-to-face communication? Then we have other issues within the distributed things like timings. what are the timings that a team should follow, a project should follow, since we are in different time zones. If we are in different time zones, then communication again becomes a challenge. How do we go about it? Working in different time zones and working at different timings, working in late timings can certainly have negative influences on team members. So how do we communicate to them that these are the timings that one needs to work in, and it's beneficial, it's not going to have a negative impact. So these are all the things that you come face to face when you are thinking from a communication challenge. So and another aspect from a communication challenge is, do we have proper infrastructure in place? How do we do knowledge transition? So there are a lot of things that come with the distributed model, and as I said, as we have gone over a period of year, and as we have gone year by year, we have improved and we have started working on these challenges, and we have come up with solutions for these challenges. So if there are so many challenges that we face, is working in a distributed model a disadvantage? Do we have certain advantages associated with it? Or should we not work at all in distributed model? No, no, it's not the case, because that's this is how it can work. Is um, when you are when you have um, the project spread across the world, the costs are also generally low. So we see that a lot of organizations come to India because or go to Philippines or go to some Southeast Asian countries, because the cost is low for setting up the infrastructure or setting up uh, the offices. And we'll come to that in a separate slide where we'll be talking about that. Um, but that's how it's helpful working in a distributed model. Exchange of knowledge in both directions as to how to develop software and on cultures and languages. But coming to the exchange of knowledge in both directions and broadening of visions for all participants from a software perspective. Usually, if you are working at a local level only in an organization, say you're in India and you're just dealing with people in India, um, your mindset is has not been completely challenged or completely evolved, because you do not know how things work in the world outside India. So if you are in a distributed team and you're working with people from various geographies, various countries, then you get an idea and a view of how things work in the world, and a perspective of things, how things are happen outside India. So it actually broadens your vision and it helps you. You do things much clearly once you start understanding all these aspects. And from cultural and languages, yes, you get a chance to an opportunity to learn various languages. You have that challenge of if you have a Japanese client, if you have a German client, if you have a French client, so it gives an opportunity to, you know what, learn a new language. And it's always good to have, or always good to learn a new language, so that gives you an opportunity to do so. And from uh, the organization's perspective, what they do is to make it simpler. They go for acquisitions and they go for expansion, and so that way they also go for a global reach, and thus make it simpler for distributed teams to work when you're working in the same company or working for the same organization. And when and And if, from a perspective of when working with teams from different geographies, you might end up finding up certain talent, certain skills, uh, or you might be surprised to see the amount of talent present in another team, and an amount of knowledge that the other teams have. This should inspire one to upskill themselves and come to come to the same level as the other team members in the other geographies. So that's an advantage that you might get, that one would have if you are in a distributed model. uh, if you are in the same team who has the same skills, and you might not be that inspired to probably upskill, but when you have, or when you are working with teams from different geographies, have more, which have more skill set, and have more knowledge on a particular subject, then you should be probably inspired to do the same and upskill yourself, thus improving yourselves too. And how has it been helpful for the organization? From it has also from a perspective of follow the sun model. uh, the amount of work is nearly the double that you can achieve in a co-located model. So in a co-located model, you'll probably work 8 hours a day, but with working in a distributed model, you might end up the total work done might be around 15 to 16 hours. So you're doing, so double amount of work can be achieved. So you're nearly doing the follow the sun approach. Only 7 to 8 hours is where the downtime would be. We'll be talking about it in the upcoming sprint. And then with the um, challenge of and to address the challenge of how can we communicate the client is when the overlap time should be used judiciously and in a proper manner. Uh, when we are working in our projects currently, we have overlap time in the evening, and that's when you can use to do the ceremonies or getting issues or answers, is issues or uh, answers for the things that are bothering you. And that's why it's important to have that overlap time, and that's how one can decide as to if we are working in a distributed model, what's the timing our projects should follow, so that we have enough sufficient overlap time where people can talk to each other and get things resolved, and then it becomes easier to do the job. So that's how it would work in a distributed model. And use of tools, see, the challenges that we talk about today, tools play a very, very, very important role in that. If we do not have tools, it becomes really difficult to operate in a distributed agile world. With the advent of tools like, if we could talk about Skype, if we talk about video conferencing, if we talk about Link, smart boards, all of this help us address the challenges that we face in the distributed agile world, and it becomes simpler. So hence, with all of this in place, it's easy to say that distributed agile or distributed model is not a waste of time, but it's actually a good thing to have. So let me talk to you about, or let me show you a few samples of how a distributed agile team would look like. This is from a perspective of working in different continents. So we have few here in Asia, we have few teams here in South America, we have teams in North America, and together we are forming a distributed team. And then we would have something within the same continent or the same geography. So it's like India and Singapore nearby, not too far away, but still working as distributed teams. Few teams over in Singapore, some teams over in India, and together working as a distributed team. So how is team distribution usually happens in a distributed model? It can happen first of all within the same geography and across geographies. So when we talk about same geography, what many a times we don't realize when we are in India and working for an organization or a client, we would have teams, say in Hyderabad, in Bangalore, in Chennai, in Delhi, and at that moment of time, we don't realize we are actually a distributed team. We just feel, oh, you know what, we are one team because we are in India. No, because no, it's fine to think we are in India, but we are actually in a distributed model. We are a distributed team. So that's how teams usually are many a times. that you might not find all the teams sitting at the same location. They will be at the different locations within the same geography, and that's what it talks about, the same geography. And then then we have the other aspect of different geography. So we might have teams in somebody in Japan, someone in Philippines, someone in Canada, someone in North America, and then we have somebody in India. So that's how the team distribution can happen. So these are the two ways teams get distributed in a distributed model. And then we have uh, the roles that are there. We have business analysts, we have architects, we have technical guys, then we have development team, we have scrum master, we have product owner, um, and it's but natural to have people from various different backgrounds to be part of this agile team or scrum team, because that's what the scrum teams or agile teams are about. They are truly cross-functional teams. So if we have people just from the same technology or domain being a part of the team, then we are not a scrum team. So that's a good thing to see, that we have such amount of teams working across various geographies, or people from various skill sets working across various geographies. So let me talk to you about few models from a distributed delivery model. The first one is a pure offshore delivery model, which 90% of our teams have. We have Scrum teams, the Scrum Master sitting over in India, and then we have the product owner in Canada or US, and that's how we work on a daily basis. And that's called as a pure offshore delivery model. Now we have the second model, which is called as co-located model within the distributed model. So what does this mean? Many of the projects like banking applications or healthcare applications, they have few critical applications where you cannot stop working. But when I talk about stop working, it's we have to realize why is the team stop to work. Um, Many times it happens that teams run into a functional issue. They do not understand a functionality, and at the moment of time, there is nobody to help them, because since being in different geographies, at that moment the client is not available or the product owner is not available. They are at home, they are at sleeping, and you cannot disturb them. So how do you overcome some such type of challenges? So what organizations have done is, before the team starts working in the sprint, a business analyst is sent to the client location, who spends some 1 to 2 months of 2 months of time at client location, and understand all the requirements and understand all the aspects of the release, from the requirements perspective, from a user story perspective, from an acceptance criteria perspective, and comes back and joins the team here in India, and is available to the team all the time. So if a team member or anybody runs into an issue from a functionality perspective, they can just walk up to that uh, BA and ask them, hey, you know what? I have some issues. Can you help me? And the BA can help them with the functionality. So in this model, it is called, the role of the BA is called as a proxy product owner. So that's what proxy product owner would do. They would help the team and be available to the team all the time. And that's what is called as a co-located model within a, a distributed model, because everybody is present in the same room. Then we come to the third model, that's called the nearshore model. So over the period of time, a major complaint that the client had is that we are not getting real-time support. It's like when we are coming to office and we run into some issues, we have to wait till the evening, or we have to wait to 4 to 5 hours before any of the queries get resolved, because we do not have real-time support, and the team is usually gone home or asleep, and the time that we need help, we are not getting help. So propose us a plan. That's what they say to the vendors who approach them for the projects. But they also put the condition, we are not going to give you extra money for it. We are not going to give you space for it. None of your people are coming here and working. None of your people are going to get access to any of our locations. So the vendors had this issue, and to overcome these challenges, they started looking at the adjacent countries, and that's where countries in South America got prominence. So we have a lot of IT organizations now in Mexico, Chile, Brazil, all of these places because of the main problem, that is to provide a real-time support. How do we provide real-time support by being in this country? Because these countries are in the same time zones as our the clients are. So if the clients have any issues, they can just pick up the phone and reach up the person who in these countries and get their issues resolved and thus have the real-time support. Now, these countries where the IT organizations are setting up offices are readily calling up the organizations and offering them tax breaks and tax sops and providing them infrastructure, providing them people, because they are also um, they also want to join the bandwagon of IT industry. The primary industries in the main staple industry in these countries is usually the fishing industry, and not everybody can survive on that. So they are very keen that the IT organizations should come on their uh, um, eh, on their location or in their countries and do business there. So it will be helpful for the locals too. Um, so and as the costs are less, the IT organizations are more than happy to set up centers there, because if they had to set up the centers in say Canada or US, it would have been much more expensive than it is there in the South America country. So that's where the concept of nearshore was born, and today we see all the IT organizations have this nearshore model included in their system or a, in their culture. So that's another example of a distributed model. So there are a few other models that are there, but these are the three prominent models that are being used in our industry currently. So moving on, that's how work gets distributed across agile or in a distributed model. So we have all the ceremonies, we have all the plannings, we have scrum of scrum calls, we have the iteration, then we have the sprint planning, then we have the sprint execution happening, and this is something that happens on a daily basis across the geographies, all over the geographies in today's world. That this PPT just depicts the picture of the things that are happening in our IT world in a distributed model across various geographies. So to just give you guys an example of how things can be done in a distributed agile or a distributed model, to take an example of the ceremonies, how ceremonies can be held is just an example. It will differ from project to project. So the first thing would be that the release or PI planning would be common across onshore and offshore. The sprint planning would be local. Weekly one scrum of scrum 15 minutes, or scrum of product owner, so you can have a product owner sync or you can have the scrum of scrum call depending on project to project. And the daily stand up again would be 15 minutes and would be local. Remember guys, only the three questions. Every second week have a giant backlog grooming or refinement where everybody would go through the backlog, anything new that is coming in, anything that has to be removed, anything that has changed, all gets discussed in this refinement session. And then we would have retrospective, which would be local, review, which would be common when we talk about it would be the shareholders, stakeholders, product owners, all of them coming on to this call. So, and there are a few other things that you can do. As I said, it changes from project to project, it differs from project to project. This was just an example of how things can be done in a distributed model. So Earlier when I talked about follow the sun approach, this is what I meant. I will show you a couple of models, few models on this that approach. So this is one of the approach where we have teams from three different countries working. We have the Indian team, we have the team in Chile and Canada, and then we have the team in Mexico. So if say the Indian team comes at 1 o'clock in the afternoon and works till 11 o'clock in the night, so they are working 10 hours per day, and then when the team at Chile and Canada they come in at 9 a.m., it's 6:30 here in India. And similarly, when the team in Mexico comes, it's at 9 a.m. It is around 7:30 here in India. So the total overlap period that we get is around 4.5 to 5.5 hours, and the amount of work, the total amount of work getting done is around 16 hours. So it's nearly double the work that you would do in a co-located model. So in a co-located model, you would not work more than 8 hours per day, but here in a day, around 16 hours of work is getting done. Only 8 hours of work is when nobody is work. 8 hours of time is when nobody is working. So more amount of work gets done in a delivery, in a distributed delivery model. So hence, I I would reiterate the point saying that though we do double the amount of work, it is only possible if we do it in a correct manner. So let me show you another example. This is something between India and Seattle. We get only 2 hours of overlap, but things can be planned again in a good manner. And but again, important thing is that coverage is of around 15 hours. And similarly, if you are working in a model which is India and Singapore, so again we get a 15 hours of coverage and around 5 hours of overlap time. So this is a big advantage of working in a distributed model where uh, more amount of work can be done as you have more amount of coverage. This is as I said is the follow the sun approach, and we ensure that we have enough overlap time where people can talk to each other about any issues, concerns, and have the ceremonies taken care of in that overlap period of time. And as you can see, there is very small window of time when there is no work getting done. So certainly working in distributed agile works helps by us following the follow the sun approach. So what about the tools and the technology that are there that can be used in the distributed agile world? We have lot of tools that you can use. So from an iteration planning and meeting perspective or a daily stand-up perspective, we can use Link, we can use video conferencing, we can use desk cameras, we can use Jira. For retrospective, we can use smart boards, desktop sharing. For showcase, we can use Link TV. For electronic walls, we can use dashboard plugins. For Jira connected to TV or projector. For pair programming, we can use desktop sharing tools. And for all purposes, you can use teleconferencing, though teleconferencing should be the last resort. We should have all other tools that are mentioned above in our system, in our place, so that face-to-face communication becomes an easy thing to do. Um, Teleconferencing is okay, but it should be, as mentioned, our last resort. So this is another example of how collaboration tools help in doing a lot of stuff that we do in our daily projects like release planning, daily sprint activities. You can use emails, videos, face-to-face, teleconference, link. So this is just an example of a project that would use the collaboration tool. And these are how the our tools world looks like, I believe, and I'm pretty much sure there are more tools than that you can see on this PPT, but this is how the tools integrate with each other, and these are how they get used across in the distributed world. Um, it's just an example to show you how things work from a tools perspective. And as I mentioned, this is from a technology utilization. Um, it it talks about continuous integration tools. It talks about centralized code repositories, agile project management, and tracking tools. I'm pretty much sure you'll see a lot of stuff that you use in your projects currently in these three categories. And if anything is missing, I'm sure they also would certainly fall in these three categories. So this is how the technology utilization can be done across the distributed teams. Now we come to the second most important challenge, and that is the cultural challenge. So what we have to realize that we are going to talk or deal with people who comes from various geographies, various cultures, and something that is funny to you might not be funny to other person. So we have to be very wary of that as to whom we are dealing with, and we should be sensitive about the culture that we are dealing with. So just to give you an example, the first symbol it where if you do that first symbol, it means very good, excellent in India or in our part of the world. But if you do that in Brazil, it is considered a rude gesture. So you cannot use that symbol there. And secondly, if you are using the finger and asking somebody to come towards you, which many of times we might do it in our day-to-day activity, but if you do that in Philippines, that it means like that you're are treating the person as a dog, and because this symbol is used for dogs there, and we have to be again wary about that. It might be it might look a simple gesture, but we have to be really, really careful about how we are using it in different countries. And the third is the most common thing that all of us use: thumbs up, nice work, nice job done, good work done, it was good. That's how simple it is. But when we talk about countries like Bangladesh or few other countries, it is considered offensive to do that symbol or to do that gesture. So as I mentioned, it's a cultural thing, and we have to be very, very about that, about how we deal with people with different cultures. Because if you are not respectful about people about of different cultures, that's when mistrust comes within team. People don't trust each other, and they don't want to talk to each other. So we have to be really, really careful about how we are dealing with the people from different cultures. And there are some ways you can go about it. So you can do regular site visits. If you see in the between, you can do certain amount of site visits. Say every 3 months, you can have a rotation policy where people from different teams can go to other locations, understand their culture, talk to people from the other different teams, understand how they work, what they like, what they don't like, and all keep all those aspects in mind. And when we are dealing with them in future, you keep all of those things that you have learned, and that's how you build that trust. And secondly, um, have workshops, or it's called as cross-cultural liaisons. Like, have workshops, have 3 or 4 days workshop where people from all the geography just descend upon at one location, and together form different teams, work towards a solution, do some activities, build that trust among them, understand about each other, and thus remove that mistrust that one might form with other teams. So this will help in in two manners. You'll have a stable team, and there will be an absence of threat, so people will not feel threatened. So that's how you can go about the managing the cultural challenges within the team. So in conclusion, what I would like to end with is that this PPT talks about some best practices that have been formed over years of implementing them, and these are lessons well learned. These are the things that one can keep in mind. These are the things one can use for the challenges that they're facing in the distributed agile team. And if they come up with more best practices, this, this is a place where it can be added, and this list can keep on growing. So that's all I had, folks, from my side. I hope this presentation was eventful and helpful to you guys. Um, I wish you all the best, and soon we'll come up with another webinar. Till then, have a great day, guys. Thank you.